Right. So one of the things that I was struck by in my time at the Lincoln Fellowship of Claremont this last summer was just continuing to think about this notion of human nature in relationship to everything else that's progressing, right? It's very clear that science and our understanding of science, rather, because I guess the physical world isn't really progressing, but our understanding and ability to manipulate it is progressing. Our technology and health and media, communications, all these things, even our ideas of like how to implement government, all these things have changed. But like, has human nature and I have a evolutionary psychologist coming on very soon, Bo Weingard, to discuss this very issue. Has human nature fundamentally or materially changed in the last 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, 5,000 years? What do you think?
I would say no. Jaffa would say no. Strauss would say no. Uh, and one strong bit of evidence for that, aside from evolutionary biology, and I kind of have a little bit of a side interest in evolutionary biology. I got into the paleo diet a couple years ago, and then sort of just got curious about some of this. And we're still hardwired in many ways as hunter gatherers. And one of the big problems with this is a whole separate conversation from political philosophy,
Sure.
but there there's a lot of reasons why a lot of features of modern society are bad for us, even beyond the moral political realm, diet and so forth. But one reason we know, just to stick with morals and politics, one reason we know we haven't changed that much is if we do take Plato and Aristotle, just to name the most famous guys, if we do take them seriously and start reading them, it turns out, wow, they're talking about exactly the same things. So, read Aristotle's great treatise on the good life, on the happy life, on the virtues, called the Nicomachean Ethics. It's really about what does it take to be a good person? How do you develop the kind of character that will not make you just good, but happy? Because for Aristotle, to be good and to be happy really meant the same thing. And it turns out it makes perfect sense, right? It like you read it, if you read it and take it seriously and just keep an open mind, you'll like, yeah, courage, it's the same. Moderation, it's the same. And it turns out even the more sort of problematic one, justice. Okay, yeah, it turns out justice, giving people, equal things to the degree they're equal and unequal things to the degree they're unequal, that's still true. So you can just see it for yourself in a way if you keep an open mind.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. And I have lost religion. I never really took it as a kid. I was bar mitzvahed. I was half Catholic, half Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed and went to mass. So nothing ever stuck for me. And I have been on a path of rediscovery in the last couple of years, and it's been accelerating very much lately. And one of the things that has given and sort of buttressed this search is that is coming to this understanding that human nature hasn't fundamentally changed. And then I ask myself, well,
Right.
why hasn't human nature fundamentally changed? And then, well, if you read the Bible, it says that because man was created in the image of God. And if he's created in the image of God, I'm assuming God isn't progressive or historicist. And so maybe human nature isn't bound to change. And these are just my lay interpretations of what I'm reading. I don't know if that's right or wrong or not. But it has helped me come to have more of an appreciation for universal truths, underlying substrates of society and culture and civilization that may have not changed over time, even though we have totally the modern philosophy in general has totally sort of dropped it through historicism and progressivism and positivism, which I have rediscovered the definition by reading your book again there too, right? Which is that nothing exists that can't be proven, basically.
Right.
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 So
Right.
I'm again in pre-show. I explained I'm not a philosopher. I am just a guy with a mic. So I'm learning, and I know the audience appreciates it when I ask some basic questions like that. But to continue on our path here, right? So I do have a thread that we're following, and the Aristotle and Plato, they established ideas of how to be good and what a good political system looks like. And then over time, it was lost and swallowed up to historicism and progressivism, etc. And then Strauss sort of reinvigorated the study. But I think we're skipping over the founding, and I think the link
Yeah.
here between the ancients, the founding, and today And I think that's where Strauss and Jaffa come in. So, what is your understanding of the founder's relationship to Aristotle and the ancients? And then somehow we're going to get to Lincoln as well in in this conversation. So,
Sure. Yeah, a lot of ground to cover. So,
5 minutes, go.
yeah. So, Strauss really had his hands full in a way, just dealing with the theoretical element, right? Just to revive the serious study of political philosophy, to take it seriously, to challenge various modern dogmas and doctrines that arose out of modern philosophy. There's a whole story there about how, in a way, mankind abandoned the rational inquiry of truth. People sort of know that's what postmodernism leads to, right? There is no truth. We just make it up. There's nothing out there that's objectively true. Strauss, again, sort of had his hands full dealing with that on the theoretical level. Although he was a great admirer of America, and he was very concerned with the political implications of what happened in modernity. It was really Jaffa who turned that specifically to America. And so, in the same way that Strauss said, look, we can still learn something from Plato and Aristotle, Jaffa thought maybe we can still learn something from Madison and Jefferson, and maybe what the Declaration says about tyranny and justice and the right political order is true, not just true in 1776, but true today. And he really, in a way, devoted his whole life to articulating that proposition and defending the founding, the principles of the founding, uh, the theory of the founding as true, because it reflects human nature. It reflects the true account of how people can organize themselves in a political community that will protect our rights and allow us to be happy.
And the founders, do you think that they believe that they were creating a political system that was couched in universal truths and therefore universally applicable, or was it more custom suited to the time and the people and the historical era that they found themselves in? This is something I'm struggling with right now.
Right. So the whole idea of historicism, this little technical term we've been talking about, doesn't really emerge until sometime after the America's founding. It emerges from a Greek, from a German thinker named Hegel and others. There are other people, Rousseau and others, who play a part in that. But at the time of the founders, this wasn't really a dominant idea in modern philosophy. But even apart from that, one really important lesson that Jaffa liked to emphasize was that the founders were practical men. They weren't primarily philosophers. And so they read a lot of political philosophy. They read, there's a famous letter from Jefferson talking about the sources of the Declaration of Independence. And he mentions Aristotle and Cicero, Locke, John Locke, and Sidney, Algernon Sidney, two ancients and two modern thinkers, right? And so the framers were very practical. There's a Greek word, phronomoi. They were prudent men. They applied prudence, practical wisdom to achieve a political object, which was to found a new nation on the best basis that they could derive. And so they took what they found useful from ancient, from modern, from history, from politics, from law, from economics, from military history, and they did think that the regime they were establishing reflected human nature. I mean, the whole reason that they were drawing from all of these different sources is because that they thought there were permanent things that they could combine in a way that would secure people's rights and establish justice, as the Constitution says. So yeah, no, they were definitely not enthralled to this idea of a linear progress of history where we're just sort of trapped in our own little uh, cultural amber, so to speak.
Right, right. Well, Alexander Hamilton said that the government must be fitted to the people like a cloak to the body or a suit to the man, which imply
Right.
and then he goes on to say that what would be reasonable in Washington D.C. would be silly in Paris and preposterous in Petersburg. Or I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
So I read that and and then I read John Jay talk and define what the American people were at the time. They were born together by language and history and custom and blood and war and experience and to
Right.
create an American people. So when you take this idea, the cloak fitted to the people. And then you take the idea from Jay that the American people were unique, and especially at that it's a particular time. Was the 1789 government fitted to a people in a way that's universally applicable for whatever people you put in that jacket? Doesn't seem like it to me if you take these two ideas together. And or
No.
also, what if the people who are wearing the cloak change? What if they get fat? What if it's different people? What if it's a
Right.
short guy? What if it's a dumb guy? How does that work? Tied together with the previous question I just asked you about whether or not the founders thought that these were like universal truths in a universal sort of political regime that they had created.
Right. So I only gave sort of half the story, and that's because we were looking at one error, which is the error that there's no objective reality, there's no permanent truth, there's no enduring morality out there. Um, that's one error. The other error is to think that there's only theoretical truth, right? Politics is always a combination of form and matter. This is a really great lesson out of Aristotle's Politics. Every regime has to combine an idea of justice, a system, a plan, a constitution, a theory, with the particular character of the people. And that's the part you were just mentioning. And so you get both of these errors in a way. The hyper traditionalists, the hyper what are called paleoconservatives, tend to overemphasize the particular character of the people, and that is super important. And Jaffa was clear on that. The founders were clear. Liberal democracy does not work everywhere. You know, we see this with the failure in Afghanistan, right? The supposedly smartest people in the world missed this very, very basic idea that you can't just impose liberal democracy on a people who don't have the habits, the customs, they don't have an understanding of where rights come from. They're not enlightened. That's the term that the founders would have used. You know, they don't have religious opinions that are compatible with liberal democracy, and so you can't just impose it, right? The form and the matter have to go together. The form is the idea, the concept of justice. The matter is the character, the habits, the moral customs, the religious opinions, and both of those have to fit. And so Afghanistan is one error, and the complete rejection of theory, the idea that only the particular matters, that's the other error. And the trick is to get them to work together.
That was an excellent non-answer, sir. I'm going to ask you one more time.
Sorry.
Okay, let's try it a different route. Do you think the form here, I'm sorry, do you think the matter here has changed? That's my question. Has the matter in America changed, necessitating a change in the form?
Yes. Okay. I wasn't trying to duck your question. I just got caught up talking about Aristotle and lost my train of thought. But I'm not ducking it. Yeah. So the character of the people has changed a lot, and that means that if the character of the people no longer fits with the form, then you have to sort of step back and reappraise things. Now, how you do that is a difficult question. It's ultimately the job of a statesman who understands both sides to understand, okay, how do we modify things now? The character of the people has changed. We don't have the same habits. We don't, most people don't know where their rights come from, right? In the way that the Declaration explains it. We're not as good about both asserting our own rights and respecting the rights of other people. We don't educate people in the habits of self-government the way we used to. And so when all of that falls away, the customs, the virtues necessary, then the form, the system, the plan, the theory isn't going to work as well. Now, what precisely you do, you know, I have my own opinions on that. Other friends of mine associated with Claremont have their opinions on that. But ultimately, that's requires a kind of a genius in practical wisdom, a kind of a statesmanship to say, okay, what do we do A, B, C, and D to fix it? And you know, everyone has their own thoughts on that. I don't have some secret answer to that one.
Well, I'm very curious to hear what your own personal thoughts are on the matter. And I'm just going to tell, it's funny, man. I interview a lot of philosophers, and you can have a 2-hour conversation with a philosopher and never once hear what they actually think. Because they're always like, well, this guy said that, and this guy said that. And if you put it in the terms of this, and blah, 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 blah. So sometimes I have to be like, put all that aside, dude, and just tell me what you think. I'll tell you what I think. you mentioned all kinds of ways that the matter has changed. Blood is a big one. And look, my
Yep,
family came here late 19th century, so I'm not a son of the a revolution or anything like that. But I do understand how the blood has changed, customs changed, language has changed, everything has changed. You even mentioned uh, people don't even know where our rights come from. I would even go further and say people have rejected the source of those rights, right? As you can see in
sure.
the declining religiosity of the United States and the growing element of the nuns or whatever, NONESs, of the atheists or agnostics here. Um, all those things have changed so fundamentally that it makes me wonder, it makes me ask the question that were the founders focused on creating a constitutional republic as they did as the top priority, or were they focused on creating the right government at the right time to protect natural rights as they saw it? And what was the priority? Was it the constitutional republic, or was it the custom fitting of the cloak to the people?
Well, of course, it was the custom fitting of the cloak to the people as the immediate answer. But also, they were very conscientious of the historical moment that they were in and of the great historical leap they were making. I mean, America, they were not unaware of the fact that they were doing something really significant for the first time in history, right? The cloak has to fit the people. Absolutely, no question about that. But also, as they mentioned many times, they were vindicating for the first time the possibility of self-government, right? The whole history of feudal Europe was the rejection that the people could govern themselves. It was a rejection of natural rights. It was a rejection of equality of opportunity because of feudalism and a phony aristocracy of those European aristocrats and divine right of kings and all of that. So the founders were doing something very particular, suited for particular people, but it is also a gigantic historical step for the first time to say you can build a country on the basis of these enduring truths. You have to have people with the right habits and virtues and so forth, but it can be done, right? And so there's an important theoretical uh, achievement, a world historical achievement that's happening there, even though the cloak doesn't fit everyone all the time.
Doesn't hardly fit us at all. When I say
Right.
America is obese, it is a both a metaphor and literal. And the idea
Yeah.
here is this crisis of obesity that we face is that, yeah, man, the coat we have on is like busting at the seams. It's all splitting apart, it's all shredded, looks dumb on us, it's awkward, it doesn't fit.